since the strike began, but the papers still are reportedly being dumped and detoured before they're delivered. Overnight, there were 2 more arrests for attacks on non-union workers. The Newspaper Guild says it is planning to meet with the federal mediator and news management. Last night, publisher Jim Hogue met with Mayor Dinkins to discuss how to try to end the dispute.
New York Daily News filtered into Yonkers today. Striking workers were angered when scabs apparently dumped more than 10,000 undelivered papers in the parking lot of the Roy Rogers restaurant on Central Avenue. No one saw who actually left the papers. 10 unions are striking the news, including the delivery men, and they said the scabs are apparently not doing the job.
They were delivered probably about 3 or 4 o'clock this morning in hopes that they might be picked up for distribution in the area. And evidently they weren't picked up. Nobody was here to receive them, and nobody showed up to take them after the news truck left. In the meanwhile, the manager of the slot is very upset that this is the actions of the Daily News now with their delivery system.
Well, a spokesman for the news did not know why the papers were not delivered today. But
pages on this evening at the newsstands, on the delivery routes, and on the picket lines. At this hour, workers from unions from throughout the city are rallying in front of the Daily News building on 42nd Street in a show of solidarity. But the object of all this fighting, the tabloid itself, is very hard to find. Sarah Wallace is live with the very latest on the strike. Sarah.
Well, Roz, I can tell you that the situation is getting pretty rowdy here, and there are plenty of police and plenty of union workers. In fact, if you look behind me, you might be able to see that this entire block of 42nd Street between 2nd and 3rd is almost completely filled with people, even though this rally is not scheduled to begin for another half hour. Also, take a look in front of the Daily News building. You also might be able to see that these folks have been yelling "Scab News" in front of the building, which is protected by a battalion of police in heavy riot gear. Meantime, there continues to be a discrepancy about how many readers are actually getting the paper. To hear management spokeswoman Lisa Robinson tell it, circulation figures for the non-union news are building every day.
Overnight, we had about 1.6 million copies that went out and were distributed.
The papers may be getting out. The question is, who are they getting to? Take a look at this. There are some 7,000 papers here dumped in this parking lot on Central Avenue in Yonkers. This sign with a message saying, "Here's Lisa's News," sits on top of the pile, put there by Westchester County wholesalers of the paper who claim they're being bypassed now.
We want to show Lisa where her circulation is. This is where it's at. And there's Stearns, right across. Stearns, pay attention. This is where it's at.
And this Brooklyn store owner on Atlantic Avenue, who normally gets 1 bale, claims non-union drivers are now dumping dozens of bales every day on his sidewalk.
So I was keep calling to the office that I don't need these papers, please take them out. They said, don't worry, these are the new drivers, they don't know where they have to put. So today what happened, some union members came in, and they cut the bundle and they throw them all over the street.
I don't have confirmed reports at this point.
I saw it in both cases, just dumped papers left there. So how do we explain it?
I don't doubt that there are papers which are not reaching the newsstands. And the reason they're not reaching the newsstands is the threats and the violence and the vandalism against those who are distributing the paper.
Management is concerned about circulation because they don't want advertisers to pull out. Advertisers would not discuss their plans with us, but today's editions of both the New York Post and Newsday are much thicker than usual, and both papers say they will have dozens of additional pages in their Sunday editions. Well, the strikers here and their supporters, the other union members, are vowing to boycott not only the Daily News itself, but to put increased pressure on advertisers to pull out of the paper. If you see that happen, then there may be some break in this strike. Live from Midtown, Sarah Wallace, Channel 7 Eyewitness News.
And Sarah will be monitoring that situation for us. If there are developments, we will go back to her live.
Overnight, we had 1.6 million copies that we printed and got distributed.
Printed. Yeah. And there's a great difference between printing them and getting them out in the street.
Piles of the newspaper were literally on the street in Yonkers, striking drivers who say they found these 7,000 copies dumped in a parking lot across from the Cross County Mall, attached a message for the paper's spokeswoman quoting yesterday's circulation. And the war of words has spread to the radio. Here's a commercial put out by the paper.
We're not out to break the unions at the New York Daily News. But we can't let the unions manage our business either.
And the striking unions are fighting back with words of their own.
This sounds like a raw deal. If you care about New York, please don't buy or advertise in the Daily News until it comes back home.
The unions are suffering setbacks with members crossing the line. Half the sports writers have gone back and nearly all the photographers. Reporter Larry Sutton has not.
Staying here for the last 5 days, I think about going back myself every day, and by the end of the day, I might be there.
Now, reaction. Down a city block and stop traffic dead in its tracks. More than 5,000 strong, union members chanting slogans at a feverish pitch, threatening to shut down the Daily News.
We're out here in force, and we're united, and we're going to continue until we have fair contracts.
With overwhelming support from laymen and locals throughout the unionship, members on one side of the picket line urge their brethren who had crossed to the other side to come back to the streets where they belong. Anything to say to those who have crossed the line?
How can you live with yourself?
Earlier in the day, Labor Advisor Theodore Keel made an offer to the Tribune Company to take the Daily News off its hands.
I have put together the financing necessary to buy the New York News on fair and equitable terms.
The paper's response, no sale.
This latest ploy is really an attempt to divert the attention of the union violence and vandalism we've seen in the streets of New York. That's all this is. Daily News isn't for sale.
Well, John, as we all know, there has been violence in this strike. It has been charge, countercharge. The two sides appear to be locked in an arm wrestle, no one willing to say uncle. The rank and file could be crippled by this strike, or the Daily News could run into so much red ink it could never recover. I'm Lynn Brown, reporting live outside the Daily News building. We go back to the studio.
Thank you very much, Lynn, for that report. Now to Channel 2's Carol Iavana in Midtown. Carol?
Well, Michelle, as you said, the newspaper strike is now 1 week old, and in the past few days, we've seen members of the Newspaper Guild cross the picket line. Almost half the sports writers have gone back to work, and almost all of the photographers have. That may seem like union weakening, but just a few hours ago, right in front of the news building, we saw a lot of union strength. The message was crystal clear. Union solidarity. No scabs and no union breaking. More than 10,000 of the rank and file rallied in front of the Daily News building tonight as the strike turned a week old.
The people are turning out to let the news know and the people know in this city that the working people have to have dignity and get back at the bargaining table so we can get a contract.
Electricians, carpenters, and other union members not associated with the Daily News also lent their voices and their support.
Off Central Avenue in Yonkers, witnesses told us non-union news drivers are dumping thousands of papers every day. And a store owner